Last week, I pulled out a coffee I was really excited about from my regular subscription. It was actually this one here. And based on all the info on the back, it was going to be a good time. I dialed in everything the way I usually do, but it kept tasting salty, a bit bitter, rough around the edges, a kind of umami maybe. And I was actually sure I was doing everything right, but it just turns out I wasn't. But we'll get to that. Because the main focus today is how I actually brew pour over at home every day. And it's my whole routine, and I'm not holding anything back here. And the thing is, there is actually a system. It's just a bit more involved than what you usually see in a recipe video. But really, it comes down to two recipes. There's the workhorse recipe, and this is the one that does most of the actual work. So getting to know a new bean, testing gear, comparing roasts, and all the brewing when I have to brew for a group of people. And to stay in that kind of horse lingo, we could say there's also the show horse. And that's the one I use when I want the most clear, the cleanest cup I can get. So we'll get to that one. But first, let's look at what the workhorse can do. So the first thing I use it for is quality control. And this is when I'm not really brewing to enjoy the coffee per se. I'm brewing to learn something. Maybe I want to know how two roasts stack up against each other, or I'm testing a new grinder, or maybe I just want to find out whether a bag of coffee is any good. So it's kind of meant for comparative brewing. And for this, I want the least amount of variables possible. So I actually use a Hario switch recipe that is very similar to a recipe I shared several years ago here on this channel. And that's a recipe I know a lot of you also use. And the main difference is that I will scale it down to a very tiny 8-gram size when I use it for quality control. And the reason it's so small is that I can line up 3 brewers next to each other, and then I can brew them side by side without burning through a lot of coffee. And I can also kind of brew it quite simultaneous. So there's not a big time difference between the different brewing devices when I go like that. So you could almost say that this is my alternative to cupping, but the main difference is that it's just more like real filter coffee. And that also means that if there are any problems with the grinders I'm testing or the beans I'm brewing, it will reveal them a little bit more easily than cupping. So cupping still plays an important role, but that's more if I have like 4 or 5 coffees I want to test side by side. So compared to my original Hario switch recipe, it's exactly the same pattern. You just close the switch at 30 seconds instead of 45 seconds. So first I pour 65 grams of water with the switch open. Wait for it to drain. Then I close the switch at 30 seconds, pour up to 130 grams. And then wait until the timer says 2 minutes, and then press the switch open. With this approach, you'll usually see brew times around 2:30, but of course it also depends on the beans and the grind size. The good thing about this recipe is that it's very easy to dial in, because the main thing you'll just change is grind size. If you want more clarity, you go coarser. If you want more sweetness and extraction, you go finer. For most coffees, I'll start around 93 degrees Celsius or 200 degrees Fahrenheit. But if I either have a medium roast or let's say an ultra light roast, I might go to more extreme temperatures, so all the way down to 86, 87 degrees and all the way up to a full boil. So grind size should be medium fine. In Comandante C40 terms, that's around setting 20 to 22, and for K Ultra, that will be around 5.5 to 6.5. If I'm testing grinders, I'll also change the grind size and the total volume, because that will give me different extraction yields, which is quite important in a test. This recipe is also quite handy if you just want a small cup of coffee, because it still produces a well-extracted cup that lets you really taste what the coffee is about. So I also like it for smaller cups when I'm not quite ready to commit to a full-sized mug. So this is actually also the recipe I'll most often be using when I'm brewing for other people, maybe it's an event, maybe I'm teaching or demonstrating something, and I want the coffee just to be really good and consistent. I don't want a recipe where it's too easy to get distracted, so I can still chat to some folks if I'm doing this recipe. So if I brew for more people, I'll just take the same method and then I'll scale it up to somewhere between 20 to 30 grams, depending on how many people I'm brewing for. And the grind shifts a little coarser, the timing stretch out a bit, but it's the same approach basically. I have 2 more videos on the channel going into the Hario switch technique, both the classic version and the different sized version. So I'll put a link to both of them down below if you want to go deeper. So what I love about this workhorse recipe is that it's simple, it's consistent, and most importantly, you can still get the best both out of light and medium roasts. You'll get the flavor notes that are on the back, you get sweetness, you get a quite bright acidity, and you also get some texture. What you sacrifice is a little bit of flavor clarity and complexity. So when I want exactly that, that's when I take out the show horse recipe. And even though it sounds a bit fancy, this is actually how I brew most mornings when I have a really nice bean and I also have the time to appreciate it. Typically, I'll start with that baseline approach, which is 93 degrees Celsius or 200 degrees Fahrenheit. I'll use a grind size that's around a medium setting, so it's a bit coarser than what I use for my switch recipe. It's probably Commandante C40 setting 23 to 28 and K Ultra 7 to 8. And I'm sorry I cannot be more precise than that because a lot will also vary depending on the beans and the grinder you're using. There are different calibrations out there, and even something like the paper filter itself that can really have a massive difference on the drawdown. And I like to use Cafe Abaca filters, and they are relatively fast. So if you can't get your timings to match mine, it might be that you're using different paper filters that are a little bit slower to drain. For this demonstration, I'll use a Hario V60, but this really works with a lot of different brewers, especially conical brewers. So if you have another one at home, then no problem. And I'm using a 1:16 ratio here, and I will brew 15 grams of coffee. So that means 240 grams of water. And for the blooming phase, I will use 4 times the dose. So another way to think about it is I will pour 25% of the water in that first pour. So in this instance, that means pouring 60 grams. Then I wait 45 seconds and then I pour the same amount of water again. So that is again 4 times the dose. At this point, we have reached 50% of the total water volume. And this pour is more forceful and should create some agitation. So you need to have a little bit more height on your kettle, start in the center and then slowly circle out to the sides and then come back to the center again. Then wait for all the water to be drained. At this point, I know I've achieved the first goal of my brew, which is to create some agitation so there are no dry spots inside the coffee. And now we're going to pour the remaining 50% of the water. At this point, we want a super gentle flow where you start in the middle and slowly work your way out to the edge, going in circles. And then you come back into the middle again, and then you stay more central and with a flow rate that is around 1 to 2 milliliters per second. Another way to think about this is that you don't really want a water column that is more than 1 to 1.5 centimeters above the brew bed. And if everything is done correctly, then the coffee you get from this approach is going to have very focused, clear flavors, a lot of acidity, and an aftertaste that evolves in different layers. Yeah, and that's pretty ideal how it's supposed to be. Like lots of that clarity, and you still get the body, you get sweetness. So this is just a really, really nice coffee, but it's also a lot of work. And there is actually a little hack that I often use to make this more easy to pull off in the morning when you're a little bit tired. So very often I'll just add a dispersion screen on top of the pour over cone and pour the last 50% that way. So then it's just big bloom, big pour, and then dispersion, screen, percolation. But here's also where I have to stress something important, and that is that this technique is only really half of what goes into my coffee routine. Yes, the brewing and the recipes are important, and that's what people always want to hear, the recipes, but that's not really the hardest part. So before I even begin heating the water, I look at the coffee, where's it from, what's the processing, who roasted it, how light or dark is it, and what are the flavor notes really telling me. And from there, I make a few decisions. I pick a water profile, a brew temperature, and a grind size. And then I brew, and then after that first sip, I'll make some mental notes and then I'll evaluate what to do next. And if I'm not really completely happy with the brew, I can still do some things to save it. Let's say at this point, if it's too strong, I can add in a little bit of water, just 5 milliliters or something like that. Can make a big difference. Kind of like if the coffee feels too strong and focused or acidic, this can just spread out those notes a little bit more. Maybe I'll take a little drop of some of these mineral drops here. And then add a little one, and then that will also change the flavor profile. Maybe a little bit of magnesium can help bring that fruit forward, maybe a little bit of potassium for the aftertaste. And again, it's also worth looking at the flavor notes on the back just for this purpose here. So let's say a coffee is supposed to have chocolate and hazelnut notes. I'm not going to force a magnesium forward water profile on it. I'll go with something that lets it taste more natural. But let's say it's an Ethiopian with mango, pineapple, some kind of tropical fruits, then I'll lean into that angle and use that more magnesium and fruit forward direction. And if you want to learn more about water, both the theory and the practical stuff, like how to make your own minerals, like these bottles I make here, then I do have a course on exactly that. I'll leave a link down in the description box if you want to learn more. So after the brew, I also make other mental notes. For example, related to grind size. Do I need to go a little bit finer or coarser on the grind? Maybe I need to use a different grinder altogether. It could be that I had used a high clarity grinder when the coffee would actually be better suited to something that could bring out a little bit more sweetness in the cup. Or maybe I need to adjust temperature. So doing all this after you brew is really what it's all about, and how you actually learn to make better coffee. So now let me give you that example I mentioned in the intro, and it's this Scandinavian coffee here, and this really caught me off guard recently. So I got this coffee from a Swedish roaster, and the second I see Swedish roaster, my brain goes light roast, high temperatures, maybe calcium forward water. And this particular bean here is from a roaster from Gothenburg. And I have family living in Gothenburg, so I know a lot of the roasters from that city well. I also know the general water profile, what it should be for coffees from that part of Sweden. So this is a washed coffee, and it's an SL28 varietal from Kenya. Well, although it's planted in Costa Rica. So I thought, well, I pretty much know what to do here. This is kind of like routine brewing. However, when I tried it at first, it kept tasting not that great. It was a bit salty, it was a bit sharp. It had that strange bitterness. I couldn't figure out why, because on paper I was doing everything right. And the real reason it took me so long to figure out what was wrong was that I had mentally just locked it into this kind of like Scandinavian roaster mindset. And I never actually looked at the beans closely and tried to understand the roast level. So it wasn't until I took a proper action reading that it clicked that this roast was actually objectively darker than what I normally brew, and darker than what I would normally also think of as a Nordic roast. So if I had just received the coffee with no information on the back, I would have paid much closer attention to the roast color right away. So it's a really good lesson to pay attention to the information you receive, but also really look closely at what the bean is telling you. So the moment I realized that this was actually a more developed bean than normally, I lowered the temperature down to 87 degrees, and then suddenly it tasted a lot better. So if you watched my video about glitch coffee recently, where I talked about glitch being a little bit darker roasted than the typical specialty coffee standard in the West. So this coffee here measured 91 points on the Action scale, while glitch coffee was 94 points. And on the Acton scale, higher means lighter. So glitch coffee was actually a little bit lighter than this. And for that reason, it was very surprising to me to see a Scandinavian roaster with this kind of relatively developed profile. And for comparison, here are some other coffees I've roasted. So this one here is a Randan coffee roasted to 105 Acton. And for me, that's a very kind of standard level. And usually my general approach works pretty well with this roast level. So you can use both the workhorse and the slow horse approach with all these coffees here. But at the end, it's really about that brewing temperature, the grind size, water chemistry that unlocks those final percentages of that, what separates a good, decent brew from like a real world-class brew. And that's the whole point of this kind of segment here of the video, is that it's good to have standard approaches, but the standard, it's just a starting point. So once in a while you get some extreme cases and then you need to know what to do. Yes, if you usually always buy coffee from the same roaster, you're going to have an easier time. But if you're like many people in this hobby and you like to experiment, try roasters from all over the world and brew beans that are very different, then sooner or later you're going to need to make some really big changes to your approach. So there you have it. This is my kind of coffee routine. It's not the only way, it's not the right way, it's just the one I've landed on. I have the workhorse recipe and the show horse recipe, and they are kind of designed to do two different things. But the really important thing is paying attention to all the other stuff happening around it. I still get it wrong sometimes. The Scandinavian coffee was just last week. So if you're second guessing your own routine, that will never really fully go away. I don't think it will. But that's also the fun part of the coffee hobby. By the way, I haven't shared this show horse recipe before on the channel. So actually it would be really awesome if you would try it at home. And then let me know down in the comment section how it goes. And then I can make another video going over more of the details and addressing the most asked questions about this particular method. So please give it a try. I think it's a very consistent method, and it does something that not many recipes do in terms of clarity. And if you want to understand why it works well, then I have a video about what I call a declining agitation profile, and that can really unlock something special in your brew. So I'll put that video right here, and then you can just click it in case you want to learn more, and then I'll see you over in that video.